video. Thanks for tuning in, sharing in this now moment with myself and with one another. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome, and welcome back if you have. My intention is unity and oneness in the highest levels of love light. This is part 2 of a video that I did this morning where I accidentally cut myself off with running out of room on my phone. What I have been referring to were relationships. I'm just going to say a bunch of words so I can kind of get back into that flow. I was shown 3 earths and density layers or bubbles of these earths combining into oneness. I was shown 3 buses. I was shown, so I've been talking about relationships in a nutshell. There's a lot more than just relationships. A relationship with ourselves and who we think we are. A relationship of who we think we were or thought we used to be, or who we thought we were becoming, and everything shifting. And I hadn't really gotten into that as much as I had about relationships with other people. When I have a lot of synchronicities or similarities in session, I like to share them with the collective experience, because more than one person most likely is going through this. If I work with 5 people, then, and they all have similar synchronicities, coincidences, right, going on in their lives, I like to share what I'm observing and realizing that many of us are working through on a collective scale. So many of us have poured ourselves into a mold. We've poured ourselves into a caste system, and we've essentially cast our role, been cast, thinking that we've been cast this particular line, this particular lineage, because we've agreed to fill this particular caste. So picture a broken arm or a broken leg. And we think that's where we're stuck. And then when we outgrow that caste, we start to feel guilty for many reasons. We can feel uncomfortable. We feel like we need to grow. But if we grow, we'll no longer fit into this caste, so to speak. I like to use the word caste because it's a reference to something that would seem broken. So if you've ever had a broken limb, you wear a cast so that it doesn't move until healing can occur. And what I was shown was that there are many beings who are healed. And because they are healed, they are ready to take the cast off. They are ready to fill a new role. They have already fulfilled their old role, which may have been an old play that they were written into, that they wrote themselves into, an old program that they wrote themselves into and became part of the cast. And this has been now outgrown. From one perspective, this can be a relationship. Sometimes it isn't necessarily that we've outgrown the relationship. Sometimes it could be that we're in a space where we need some space. And it may be that we just need to work with our partner in growing together. I was also guided to talk about the fact that because we are growing in a particular way, does not necessarily mean that our partner, spouse, family member, friend, roommate, sibling, is also growing in that same exact way. So for example, some of us are having difficulty recognizing that our partners are also growing, because sometimes we expect them to grow in the same way that we're growing, if that makes sense. And I used the example of my example of, all right, so here I am learning yoga and meditation and breath work, and I have all of this galactic activity going on. And my husband is looking at that like, I don't know what you're talking about, but have fun, right? I love you, I support you. And what he did for me was providing and is still providing space for me to grow, for me to express who I am becoming, who I already am as I grow out of the versions of me that I am not, or that I no longer am because I've grown longer, expansive, or I long to grow. We could play with this. That does not mean I wasn't that person before. I've just now grown into a new person. And we all do this. Most of us do this in one way or another. As I was going through this, I had to be patient with my husband just as much as he had to be patient with me, because I had to let go of the expectations of him growing in the same way. It is nice when we're on the spiritual journey to have a partner that we can talk about the galactic brothers and sisters with, or the earth changes, or the fields of the body, or auras, right? We could do breath work together. But ultimately, and some people do have that, by the way. Some people, that is their partner, and that's where they're going in this unification together. From my perspective, that's not the way that my partner and I have grown together, and that's okay. And for my space, it's helpful for me to have a partner who is living in his own way, in his own rootedness, in his own groundedness, in his own anchor, because it helps me to not float away on some cloud all of the time. And it's a gift. Is it challenging? I'm sharing this because I work with a lot of light workers who are not in a relationship that they can necessarily, that they feel that they can talk about their growth and what they're experiencing and what they're seeing. And I felt like that at one time too. And it was weird for my husband in the beginning when I started having these experiences. So over the years, we've found a way to just balance that. I won't necessarily tell him detail for detail about all of the experiences that I'm having. Yet at the same time, he doesn't talk politics or watch the evening news every night at dinner anymore either. So there are ways that we all grow in our own way. And part of our experience is about us coming into a place of acceptance and giving each other the space to be in the space and offering that space of allowance, allowing one another to grow in our own way. Of course, if we are with a partner and we're not happy, or we know that this partner will not accept us for who we are, after we've already come into this space of understanding, that's a different story. That puts us in a different realm, so to speak, right? That's not what I'm referring to. But what I am referring to is inviting everyone to just be open, to let go of the need to have expectations on how our partners, friends, or family should be experiencing their own growth. And sometimes when we take a step back and let go of those expectations, it lightens the load, it lightens the density. Because when we place expectations on our reality and one another, and those expectations are not met, and then we become frustrated, disappointed, let down, those are our own perception or perspective based on a human experience that may not have the same, we may not feel the same way a month from now. So it's almost like allow ourselves to just let go and be as spacious as possible. Allow our partners and our friends and our families to grow in their own way by us being in our hearts in coherence. This then decreases the density, because when we're feeling disappointed or guilty or let down, or this person isn't doing what I think they should do in the way that I think they should do, or vice versa, it creates sludge. It creates heaviness. I'm going to get to all of this in a minute. The cast that many people are wearing, whether this be a role, behavior, a pattern is old for a lot of people. And that's the discomfort that many people are feeling. They've expanded, and now that old mold has grown moldy and no longer fits the expansiveness that they have become or are in the process of becoming. So we're really being invited to just let go. And I was shown some people are poking holes in it and looking through. Some people are just ripping it off, and they're like, when they get it ripped off, they're like, oh my goodness, I want to go back into that cast. They see the cast as a security blanket. Because once we take that off, sometimes there's physical therapy that we have to go through. Sometimes we can't walk right away as strongly as we may have walked before because we have to learn a different way or relearn in a different way. Because we're not the same person we were when we originally put the cast on. I'm using this all as wordplay here, obviously. In addition to that, sometimes it's more comfortable feeling placed in a dense energy. For example, it's a security blanket. We feel protected. We feel safe in our old patterns or frequencies. We feel secure. And sometimes it's stepping into that unknown, whether it's moving out of a relationship or quitting that job or trying a new experience. Thinking, changing a thought pattern that's been our friend for so long. And I was guided to share, I said in my last video, some of those thought patterns that have become a security blanket are thinking that we don't deserve to leave a relationship or to, like, if I don't talk to this person anymore or I take a break, they're not going to like me anymore. Therefore, I won't have any friends. I mean, I could go on and on. Or they won't understand me, so I'm not going to speak my truth. Whatever that is, that's an old belief system that essentially made us feel comfortable because it kept us from speaking our truth, which was sometimes more uncomfortable than just being quiet. However, we're also being invited to speak our truths from a place of grace and gratitude and compassion, and not necessarily, and not stepping on another's journey, as I believe Andrew Bartzis has said many times, right? And it's important to do that. It can be challenging at times. I've stepped all over other people's journeys before when I've been experiencing some things, not realizing the way that I could have better communicated my feelings. I'm awake. I'm aware. Didn't you know this is going on? And didn't you know that's going on? And while in some cases that could be useful or helpful, oftentimes that can be very detrimental to another person's journey. That's a whole other video. So part of us is letting go of that security blanket of feeling like if we allow ourselves to be who we are, people are not going to like us, or they're going to judge us, or we're going to feel judged, or we won't be worthy of their friendship or relationship because we then stand out as odd. I think many of us have gone through that, right? All right, so the other version of this whole cast story is the people that we were cast into, or we chose to be cast with us as our crew, as our friends, who were in that same play, in that same reality, that is also shifting. They're moving on to a different reality, growth, whatever we want to call it, and so are we sometimes, which can create, again, this pulling away. And this may only be temporary. So some of that is about letting go of the fear of hanging on to those old stories, those old friends. Because again, it's that whole, if you let it go and it comes back, right? I don't know exactly how that story goes, but essentially, it's okay to let things go right now, because ultimately, we're all finding our way. Guilt, feeling guilty isn't helpful. It adds to the density that keeps us stuck in a mold, that keeps us stuck in a cast. And that is old earth, we could call it, an old reality system. Other people are poking, so people are looking through this cast going, can I come out? Can I express who I am? Is it safe to do that? Then there's the others that are, the relationship aspect. Got a bunch of light language coming through, so I'll get to that in just a second. This isn't just about a spouse. This is also about friendship and work relationships, so on and so forth. I was shown these 3 versions of Earth. And I have to get to Annette. 3 versions of Earth. Okay. Oh boy. I need to write this down later. And the older, so there's 3D, 4D, 5D. That's not the 3 necessary versions of Earth. I'm using these words interchangeably just so they can paint a picture. So this is from my own perspective, from my own style. There's different versions of this truth. So I was shown 3 bubbles, like the seed of life, flower of life. And these bubbles, rather than being separate rings, like the Olympic rings, all merged into one giant bubble. And they were basically absorbed, if you picture 3D, 4D, 5D layered on top of each other, and 5D encompasses all of them. Or we could look at it as these versions of Earth. Earth has expanded. I could go into so many different versions of reality. Earth has expanded, but within her is the denser versions of her. So little Earth, bigger Earth, bigger Earth. And they're all transposed, is that the right word, on top of one another. Interlayered and interconnected within one another. And some people are seeing this as Earth splitting off, different realms, parallel realities, an Earth over there and an Earth over here. And from one perspective, that may be accurate. But I'm just sharing what I'm being shown. I'm being shown that the more density we have, the lower frequency we are, because it keeps us in a cast and unable to expand. The more rigid and less fluid it is. Therefore, the more bacteria, mold it holds, and that essentially is disintegrating. Or better spoken, cracking. And there's this light coming through that expands out into these higher free fields. And there's a lot, again, this is just from one perspective. And the more expansive we can allow ourselves to feel, the less density we hold onto, meaning beliefs, patterns, habits, right? Guilt, not good enough, not worthy, thought patterns of judgment, blaming ourselves for current situations or blaming others for current situations, and hanging on to that creates that security blanket. Even though it feels uncomfortable, sometimes it's more uncomfortable to break free and expand because we're so used to being in a habitual pattern where it feels safer to conform. It feels safer to stay inside of our security blanket. And this leads me to talk about healing. Because I was shown that even the concept of needing more healing is sometimes an old pattern for some people. Because it becomes, and I'm hearing the word, as I heard earlier, addiction. Meaning, we can have an addiction to anything. An addiction is a habit pattern. An addiction is, and this is, I'm not getting into the genetics or any of that. I'm saying, let's say, for example, chocolate. It can be an addiction. We get into a habit of eating it and it makes us feel better, or we feel better because we eat it, or because we think it makes us feel better. It changes our chemicals, so on and so forth. It's all connected. But this can be with anything. We can sometimes become addicted to wanting the approval of our family. Therefore, we don't break out of our caste and speak our truth for the fear of losing that approval or never getting it, or having it and having that change, because change is uncomfortable. I'm using that as one example. Another example is obviously relationships. So that's kind of where I feel a lot of people are at right now. Losing grace, right? We don't want to fall out of grace with those others who see us. And I'm laughing at this because I'll explain that one in just a minute. So let me get into the 3 realms. So I know a lot of people have spoken about this split. I don't see it as 2, I see it as 3. I hear it as the triple split into the tri-merge. So it's like all this is pulling apart, and then it's merging back together. It's never truly going off into separate directions. It is expanding out, so it will feel like it's so far away, because it is. And I should have drawn this, but if you see a circle here and you see a circle here and another circle that we're all connected by one little corner, this circle down here is going to feel really far away from this circle up here. This is 3D, this is 5D, this is old Earth, this is new Earth, and we're kind of in that in between, right? I was shown that we're oscillating in and out of all of those. But I'm using these interchangeably. We could say density, dimension, and versions of Earth are all different, which is true. Yet they are all intricately connected. So that's why I'm using them. It's easier to think of it that way. So it's going to feel like we're so far away at times from this old version of us, because we are. And other times it's going to feel really uncomfortable when we're stuck in that density, because we are expanding at this exponential rate, if we could feel it. So that's kind of this oscillation that I'm seeing. So this bigger version of Earth, we'll say, incorporates all of that stuff, but then all of that density is broken apart and digested so that it can be composted, which I've talked about before, into the new Earth. Because nothing goes to waste. Nothing is wasted. So even these frequencies have been absorbed from one perspective, and they're being composted and refueled, recycled, but not recycled by using old energy. It's being dissolved, disintegrated. I keep seeing the rising phoenix, the ashes, the sulfur from a volcano. It still is utilized by the earth. Fossil fuels, right? If we look at a dump, it becomes these fossil fuels. All that trash turns into something. Not all of it's necessarily good, but the earth does have a way of cleaning itself up. And that's a whole other video. I went into this flow speaking of, okay, so let me just go backwards. I'm laughing because grace has been coming up a lot, and my sisters, Candace and Kate and Alicia, just did a video the other day, which I haven't watched the whole video of, but I invite you to watch that on Facebook. They talked about Gene Key 22. I have not read the Gene Keys. But the funny thing is, as I'm in flow about the 3 versions of Earth and grace, Gene Key 22 has to do with grace. So they gave a whole video on that, so I invite you to go back and watch. I think it's on Candace Ko, K-O, her Facebook page. as I'm driving, talking about this in my car today or yesterday, there were 3 buses that turned right in front of me. And they were huge, and they were headed to a school. But they weren't school buses. They were buses that had been utilized for some type of field trip. Ironically, last night I dreamed I was on a field trip going through a financial institution, and there were 3, I think I told this in my last video, so apologies for repeating myself, but in case you didn't watch it, there were 3 bills of money laying on the ground, and I think they were from 3 separate countries, and they had 3 separate amounts, and they were all wet, and I had given them to somebody else. I'm just seeing a lot of symbology having to do with this, and in my dream I was being schooled on a new financial institution, but institution isn't the right word. It was a financial network. Don't remember all the details, but usually my dreams have symbolism and connect in with the collective experience that is going on, and the super consciousness and this quantum computing that we're all connected to. So Annette came through as well. And when I looked up Annette, and besides playing with that word, a net, a bigger net, collecting all of us, a higher collection, it means grace. I looked it up. So I'm seeing that, and graciousness. And I'm also seeing a reference to our physical form. I wrote down I did a video 2 days ago. I'll be sharing what I wrote, talking about our spin, our frequency. We are turning back the hands of time from one perspective, and we are creating a new spin. I believe this has to do with the earth. I believe it has to do with our physical vessels. And I believe it has to do with our physical counterparts in all, we'll say, toroidal fields. And I'm also seeing the Vesica Pisces. It's not a bi-wave, it's a tri-wave, it's a tri-mergence, it's a tri-convergence. And it's 3 from my perspective. And then what's happening, I'm being shown, is these are all crossing at certain intersections, and all of the components are merging, and it's creating a net of star seeds, of humans, of colors, of sound, human, of sound, colors. And this is essentially creating the fabric of the new earth that's already been created and is already here. So I know I just combined like 10 different things, but it's all connected. So the more we allow ourselves to be in this space and to break free of the old molds, to break free of the old words that we have told ourselves, that we have been told, the old belief systems, everything is changing. The density will not hold. It's literally cracking apart. I also wrote the other day that we are the tectonic plates. We are the tectones. We are the tones and the technological humans in our own inner technology. And we are creating this deeper spin within the earth that is essentially correcting and counterbalancing the false system, the false spin, and I'm hearing the aerodynamics. We are the diamond addicts. Oh, so much. We are, arrow is truth. We are creating a directional force. We are the directional force. We are the diamond convergence. We are the many facets and facets on this earth in this technology skin suit. And as we allow ourselves to unfold, as we allow ourselves to let go, we're creating new earth now. It isn't about waiting for it to happen. It isn't about doing what our family thinks we should do. It isn't about someone else dictating to us what we need to say, how we need to say it, what's normal. All of that is no more. So I'm going to go into a little light language. I'm sure I left a few things out, but 66 was coming up too. And 66 for me has to do with spin, has to do with a ratio. It has to do with musical harmony. Kuennat eo kui et estek unnat eo kunnahane. Do. Just going to go till I run out of room. And as we create this new spin, as we create this backspin, as we allow ourselves to spin our new stories, to weave our new web, our new internet, our new intranet, to ku na te kua, te ti ne ku ha ne uaha ne, te sto kuate. We step out of complacency. We step into a higher complexity, a simplistic complexity, a simplistic, expansive viewpoint, impressionistic. We create a new vocabulary within our own bodies, within our own systematic expression of the wavelength that we are tapping into, that we are, I'm hearing a congressional pull. The congressional pull shifters, pulling apart at the seams what it is that seems to be indoctrinated into our inscription. So I'm seeing this as something to do with DNA and also indoctrination of particular laws, we'll say, the laws of physics as well. We are physically decomposing that which has been set to deconstruct, that which was set to self-construct. We are the ones deconstructing it, pulling it apart at the seams. What seems to be a linearization is now unfolding into a quantum alchemization, a quantum chemistry set, if you will. We create a mass extinction. So I keep having this reference to fossil fuels. So I'm just going with the flow, guys. For we are the pearl. We are the pearlized essence. We are, I'm hearing the milk.